Last Thursday and Friday, the House Energy Resources Committee and the Senate State Affairs Committee led a joint hearing interviewing a variety of witnesses, including ERCOT executives, members of the Public Utilities Commission, corporate leaders of private energy companies in major Texas cities, and more. Craig Goldman, a state representative from Fort Worth and chair of the House Energy Resources Committee, is with us now in a JSA exclusive. Okay, so I guess I'll just jump right into some questions. So, can you just I'm recording this. We're gonna post it on our YouTube channel, all that stuff. So, can you just talk a little bit about like your job and like who you represent and some of your committees that you're on and stuff you do at the Capitol?
Sure. Well, my name is Craig Goldman. I'm a state representative. I represent South a portion. My district is consists of Southwest Tarrant County. Every single state rep represents about 180,000 people. With so many more people moving to Texas, that will probably be closer to 200,000 people after we have redistricting this year. And so we come down to Austin, and there are 150 members in the Texas State House. And we come to Austin every other year for only 6 months to pass laws for the citizens of Texas. So 140 days every other year is how often we get together to pass the laws. So I serve on 3 committees right now, actually. I'm chairman of the Energy Resources Committee, and all these committee assignments came out 2 weeks ago. And the Speaker of the House is the one who appoints all the committees. So I serve chairman of the Energy Resources Committee. I serve on the Licensing and Regulation Committee, and I also serve on the Redistricting Committee.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Awesome. So I guess we can just go ahead and jump right in. I wanted to, some of my questions were kind of about like your expectations before the hearings last week. So maybe can you talk about like what you were expecting to happen, your thoughts during, and kind of where you see the legislature moving after?
Well, my expectations were we brought numerous stakeholders from every step from how power starts, like from the windmills, from the solar panels, from natural gas, from coal, from nuclear. Every single one of those 5 entities were represented, had a seat at the table to tell us what they do, tell us what, in their opinion, went wrong, and answer all of our questions. There were 2 committees brought together as one, so we had a joint committee hearing, pretty unprecedented for that to happen. It certainly doesn't happen every day. And so there were 24 members of the total combined committees. There were 24 members who got to ask as many questions as they wanted. So I think our first panel that we sat down, those 2 gentlemen sat there for 4 hours. Answering all of our questions. And so that the expectations were to try and get some sort of idea of what did go right, because there certainly were things that did go right, meaning we did keep power on to the majority of Texans, but most importantly, what went wrong. And because when 4.5 million Texans not only don't have power, but they don't have power for several days, then there's some major things that went wrong. And so now, after the hearings have been over, now we come together and try and put forth solutions so that this never happens again.
So what, like, tangibly, what are some of those solutions that you think will be happening? Like, are we now starting to...
Yeah, one of the biggest thing that came out of the hearing was something as simple as communication.
That's one of my questions I was going to ask.
Yeah, there was a great lack of communication from the people who knew that was going on or in preparation of what was going on to the people of Texas. And that's, when I say lack of communication, I mean a lack of communication from the people who knew that we possibly not were just going to have rolling blackouts, but could have outages for 2 to 3 days. The people of Texas didn't know that. They didn't expect that. And we've never had that before. So so we need to build a system or start a system of communicating with the people of Texas in times of potential disaster like we had. Because in my opinion, it costs lives, and we can't do that. We can't do that ever again. We warn before hurricanes we give people plenty of warning because we see the hurricane coming. And we didn't see coming, at least people on the surface didn't see this coming.
Right.
But there's certainly people who did see it coming, who are on the inside of providing the energy to us, who saw it coming potentially and didn't warn us, in my opinion, in the proper manner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw because I was watching kind of sporadically, like throughout the day whenever I could. But I saw, I think Chairman Walker is her name from the PUC, and I saw her interview, and especially towards the end when she was asked if she thought that the state deserved an apology, and she hesitated.
Yeah. Just so you know, she just resigned about 20 minutes ago.
Did she really?
Yeah. So there you go.
Wow.
You got breaking news.
Look at that. JSA, breaking news. That was probably a good call for her. That was, she did not interview super well, in my opinion.
Yeah, but just so you know, she knew what she was doing. She was the right person at the right place at the right time, because based on what I've been told that she actually did during the storm 2 weeks ago, she knew exactly what she was doing, and she knew who to call. And that's why that's an appointed position. We need someone in that position who knows exactly what to do and who to call. And she was making those calls, and she was the right person at the time in that position. Unfortunately, I just feel that the pressure, the political pressure, if you will, got too much, and so she offered her resignation letter.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of, I guess, political pressure, there was also a witness. Again, I'm just kind of asking you about things that I saw, and since I also didn't see a lot of like the introductions and whatever, I don't really know a lot of people's names. I'm kind of asking you about. But there's one witness on Thursday who basically begged the committee to just not over politicize this, and said that there were real human lives at stake, and we're like, this has been over politicized. Like, please, like, just focus on like helping people. Do not play partisan politics. I'm warning you. Whatever. So, do you believe that there's any really merit to that, or that's happening?
Well, again, it goes back to the fact that this was a major, yes, Mother Nature played a major role in this, but so did men and women played a major role in making decisions, or again, going back to the communication aspect of not making a decision to communicate good enough or well enough to the citizens of Texas that this was a major storm, unlike the state of Texas as a whole has ever seen before in the winter. We've never in our lifetimes have had record consecutive cold days like we had statewide. So, without being prepared for that, and not knowing truly that was coming or what the results of it could be, we weren't prepared. And so we have to be better prepared in the future. So, people can call it whatever they want, but our role as members of the legislature are to, if we have to, write laws to make certain that instead of giving guidances to people as laws have been written in the past is, hey, you may want to do this. I feel certain laws this time are going to be a little more strict and say you have to do this. Now, what that is right now, it's too early to tell, because we haven't even started our next round of committee hearings, which we will, to talk about specific legislation. So I imagine as a result of last Thursday and Friday, 25 hours of testimony in 2 days, that members will come up with pieces of legislation that will, instead of being guidances, will be a little more stricter in their wording of what people need to do, so that we don't ever put any Texan in this situation again.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I have to ask, after 2011, why didn't we winterize?
Oh, very good. You really did research. Good for you.
I did.
2011, if you go back and read that law specifically, that was passed in 2011, first and foremost, I wasn't here then, not making that as an excuse, but in fact, I would say more by 2011, a good majority of the current Texas House weren't even there in 2011.
Yeah, I saw in your NBC interview, you talked about that.
Yeah, we've had that much turnover. But that doesn't, regardless, what that law said is it's kind of what I just said. It didn't give strict, direct. It said you may. It didn't say you shall. So that the wording matters. So it kind of gave a guidance of what the legislature would like to see rather than just saying, you have to do this. And what we also learned in these hearings, the definition of weatherization or the definition of winterizing is very broad based on the different industries. So, so to a windmill, for example, does that mean you have to have heaters on there so that your windmills never ice over and so that they're always working? I think what we can do, honestly, is take guidances from what not only other states do, but other countries do. Because obviously the northern states, they have colder weather than what we just had, consecutive cold weather, and they don't have blackouts and they don't have outages. So basically, what do they do with their equipment that we aren't doing that we need to do?
Awesome.
And to that point, what we also learned, and this is very important, so we basically have 5 major sources to provide power for us in the state of Texas. I've talked about windmills. The windmills, while in perfect conditions, work great for us and are a great source of energy at a very low cost. But when the windmills freeze or ices form on the windmills, then they can't produce energy. Solar panels, another great green type of energy, low carbon emissions, cheap to produce, but the sun has to be out, the clouds can't be on it. Most importantly, snow can't be on the solar panels to cover them up. Coal is another form of energy supplier for us. But I didn't realize this till we had the hearings, that the coal plants couldn't run because some of the coal actually froze, and you can't burn frozen coal. So they had to wait for the coal to defreeze. So right, exactly. Makes sense. Nuclear, we have 2 nuclear plants in the state of Texas. One of them wasn't performing at 100% capacity, so we didn't have the full power of nuclear, if you will, there for us. And then natural gas we're extremely dependent on. It's a great provider of power for us, but a lot of the wells out in West Texas, a lot of the lines, a lot of the equipment froze, and so they couldn't pump out of the ground when some of their equipment froze. And then more importantly, when electricity was shut off in some of the fields, they didn't have the power to run their pumps.
Yeah.
And so there became a great lag in natural gas flowing through the pipelines. So it's a horrible word to use, but it's true. There truly was a perfect Mother Nature storm that caused almost everything that we hope would be reliable to give us power wasn't so reliable all at once, all at the same time.
That's so sad.
Yeah. And as a result, there was a loss of life, and that's everybody has to live with that, and it's not easy, especially. I mean, I think that some of the toughest testimony we heard were the power suppliers who actually were told, you need to shut off power to, we need X number of kilowatts shut down right now. And they had to go make the decisions of basically what neighborhoods they were shutting down. And it wasn't specifically, it's just where the power goes. So it was, and everybody, nice neighborhoods, they lost power, poor neighborhoods lost power. I mean, it was universal. Everybody,
it was affected.
Everybody was affected. All 29 million Texans were affected by this one way.
Yeah. So speaking of, I guess, everyone being really affected by that, the variable cost programs cause some people's electric bills to go up to tens of thousands of dollars during the crisis. And of course, I mean, that's a lot of money for an electric bill. And especially when you have other things to worry about, like maybe a pipe in your house bursting. How do we move forward from that? Who's going to pay those rates? And
so there's going to be discussions there. There's current discussion going on. In fact, at the end of last week, they started talking about that, and they still are. There's no solution yet on that, other than one co-op announced that they are declaring bankruptcy today. So we'll see what the fallout of that is.
More breaking news.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I think you possibly may see more smaller power companies, power providers declare bankruptcy, which is not good.
Mhm.
And then those people, right? Those people who have insane bills who can't afford to pay them, what do you do in that case? So I think there's many more discussions being had. In fact, I know currently there are discussions being had of what to do with all those with that situation.
And if Texas had been connected to a national power grid, what I mean, do you think that's like, we could have siphoned power off from other states. So do you think that's a possibility of even like logistically or politically? Do you think that's
Yeah,
something that could
no
happen?
one who came to testify, and since then I haven't seen one bill introduced since then that says that they want us to go back on the national grid. So I think
Mhm.
everybody is happy that we have our own grid, that we have our own
Mhm.
way. We just have to make it 100% reliable,
Right.
24/7, 365, and whatever
Yeah.
conditions are out there. So I think that's more where people are headed rather than getting back on the national grid, which we got off of in the 70s.
Mhm.
Is to keep our independence and keep our grid, but let's make it reliable.
What is the philosophy behind having our own power grid? Like just so we have more control over kind of what's happening, or like.
Yeah, I mean, basically in the 70s, they realized that we were becoming pretty energy independent on our own as a
Mhm.
state. And so that we could provide that power. There was enough in our state to provide power for our citizens. And so that's basically was the decision back in the 70s. And that's what we've been living by ever since.
Interesting. Yeah, I was kind of curious, like how that began, but I was just kind of like let it be a thought in my head. So
Yeah.
I'm.
Well, you can go back and you can go back and do your research on that from the 1970s. You can see the
Yeah, I
legislation
will.
that was passed. Yeah, it's interesting.
Hmm. Um. So a couple more questions. What are your like personal thoughts on this whole thing? Like, what are you like? If you could snap your fingers and have something happen, like, what would it be? Like, what do you?
Well, if I could snap my fingers and have something happen, it'd be like Superman and turn back time and not have it
Right.
happen. I mean, the amount of devastation. First of all, the deaths. Right? We don't
Hmm.
ever want to create a situation where our citizens die, and we had that, and so that is the most heartbreaking thing of all.
Hmm.
Secondly, is now what people are going through since then. The number of people who lost power, who were freezing cold for several days in their own homes, that shouldn't happen in Texas in 2021. And furthermore, now, all the people who went without water, who had broken pipes, who lost all their possessions because of, them being waterlogged and things like that. So this is going to hurt, and it's going to hurt for a while. And to your point now, the people opening up their bills and realizing I can't afford to pay that, what happens now? So this was it was a devastating storm. It was a devastating result of the storm and a
Hmm.
devastating situation for many people that we as lawmakers have to, again, after having 2 days of hearings, and we've taken in all the information we can, is work to make certain we put policies in place to make sure that it never happens again.
All right. And what about like federal help? Like, do you see FEMA or other similar organizations coming to the state? And.
Yeah, and they have. They
Mhm.
have. Governor Abbott requested FEMA's help and emergency help from President Biden in certain counties, and he gave us that leeway. So uh, federal help not only will still be coming, but it has been here all this week
Oh,
and
awesome. Okay.
late last week. So yes, we have received federal help at the request of the governor to the president.
Awesome. And finally, I think my last question, I probably should have asked this first, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it last. So like I said, I'm recording this meeting. I'm going to post it on our school YouTube channel. And a lot of kids at Emory don't necessarily keep up with the news. And when we show like these videos every week, like in our school assemblies and whatever we send them out, like it's kind of people's first time hearing about like Biden's airstrike last week or that jet exploding or whatever. So just as far as like someone who doesn't really know what's going on and is kind of unfamiliar about like where to start and kind of learning this whole situation and doesn't really know, like they want to know what's happening, but they don't really know where to start. What do you have to say to that person?
Well, it depends how much they want to know and how much they want to dive in. I mean, you've been to Austin before. You've been to the
Mhm.
Capitol. You pretty much have an idea of how things operate.
Yeah,
You can always go to the Texas House website. We just started this week having committee hearings. So we've been in session so the very basic of things. We've been in session since January 12th. Well, our
it's my
Constitution
birthday.
doesn't allow us, our Constitution that goes back to the 1800s doesn't allow us to pass a bill for the first 60 days we're here. So now that we're getting close to that mark, we announced committee assignments 2 weeks ago, and now bills get to refer to committees this week. And so this week and next week, our committees start meeting, and the new bills, laws start getting referred to those committees, and committees will start hearing those in committees. If they pass out of those committees, then they have an opportunity to go to the Texas House floor to be voted on by all 150 members. As long as a bill or piece of legislation passes there, it goes over to the Senate, and the whole
Hmm.
thing happens all over again. As long as the exact same language is in the exact same bills that's passed in the House and the Senate, it'll go to the governor for his signature or his veto. So that's very basic of how the process goes. But if someone
Hmm.
really wants to dive in more, like I said, they can go to the Texas House website. There's a
I
list of
mean, like
committees.
more specifically about like oh, sorry to interrupt, but
Yep.
I just mean like more specifically about like the relationship between like ERCOT and PUC and like
Oh, all
kind
that.
of yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
you
yeah,
really want to dive in there?
yeah.
Well, that's an education that can continue to go on every single day. I know I'm learning
Hmm.
something new every day. I certainly learned a bunch in the hearings at the end of last week. Um, I mean, do you want me to say exactly what the roles are, or how people can go get an education in it?
Will you explain more like what their roles are?
Yeah, so ERCOT basically it's just an entity. It's more like a pass through. ERCOT tells the energy producers how much energy they need based on how much is being consumed out there. So ERCOT would tell the power companies, I need this many more, thousands or hundreds of kilowatts, because we know that this many more people need, that they're turning up their furnaces, and so they need more heat. So they're basically an air traffic controller, if you will, directing everybody as far as what's going where. The PUC, the Public Utility Commission, is a 3-person panel appointed by the governor that oversees ERCOT, that basically oversees the industry. And then you have the people who actually produce the power, and then ERCOT then sends that power that's produced by the power makers to the distributors of it. So I
Hmm.
know we have Encore up in North Texas. Y'all
Hmm.
have
And
a
we have
different
like
company.
center points and
Y'all have
energy and
CenterPoint, exactly. Y'all have CenterPoint in the Houston area, and then they will distribute the power truly on the power lines. They control all the power lines and make sure the power gets to your homes.
awesome.
Yeah,
Well, I think actually one more question, just
sure.
for fun. Which witness stood out to you the most? Like what testimony has like really stuck with you for the past couple of
Ooh,
days?
that's a good question. That's a good question that no one's asked me yet. Alan Nye from Encore really stuck out to me, because Encore is up in the North Texas area. And they're responsible for providing the power in my hometown.
Mm.
And his testimony and his opening testimony, talking about how difficult it was to actually shut the power down on neighborhoods, and because he knew that was affecting families and possibly causing lives lost. I thought his testimony really, really stood out a lot,
Mm.
because he knew he was making decisions that personally he didn't want to make, but in reality he had to. And people were asking, why did they have to do that? Well, if they didn't shut down power, and just very plainly, if they didn't shut down power, we were minutes away from losing all power in the state of Texas for over a month. because unlike a light switch in our house, you just can't turn a switch on and off. You're talking about huge amounts of power traveling along our lines all at once. And that's why we had to have not just rolling blackouts, but had outages, is that when you turn it off, and we turn so much off pretty much all at once,
Hmm.
it takes that much longer to turn everything back on again. It's just the way the
Right.
electricity and the way the power grid goes in the state of Texas. And so, had they not shut down as much power as they did, there was a strong possibility that they didn't do that. In fact, it would have happened. If they didn't do that, then we would have lost power for possibly a month.
Wow.
I know.
Yeah, I think I caught his testimony like Thursday afternoon, I think, and I really like not like enjoyed it, but I know what you mean. Like it really stood out, and he seemed very like remorseful, sort of,
And they
and
all were, and I,
mhm,
they were all remorseful. I mean, every single person that came in front of us, you could see it in their face. Is
mhm,
they didn't want to be there because they were part of what happened,
right,
um, like it or not, so no one wanted to be there because no one wanted to discuss this situation because it hurts. Because at the end of the day, also they're all citizens of Texas,
mhm,
and we're better than this,
yeah.
and we should have never, none of us should have ever let this happen during this time. Again, we're just better than that as a state to have allowed this to happen, and we're all committed to make sure we never let it happen again.
Another huge thank you to Representative Craig Goldman. We really appreciate your time, and a big thank you to you for watching. If you're not already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, and make sure to follow us on Instagram at JSA Weekly for more videos like this. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day. See you next week on JSA.